please drop your announcements in the chat, and we can also talk about, bringing them up at the next. So it looks like we are live on Facebook. Maureen, if you could introduce our guest speaker.
Yes, it's always my great pleasure to introduce Dr. David Belk. Healthcare for All Los Angeles first became acquainted with Dr. Belk back in 2014. Before Zooms, we had Skype, right? So we had a Skype meeting with him. Dr. Belk is a graduate of USC Medical School, and he currently has an internal medicine solo practice in Northern California. And I was first introduced to him because of his very provocative and interesting website called The True Cost of Healthcare. It really has tremendous amounts of information on it and is very, very interesting. What caught my eye was his explanation of the $55,000 appendectomy charged one of his patients. This, of course, was an outrage because everywhere else in Europe, for instance, where not-for-profit healthcare is the rule, the cost hovered around $2,000, between $2,000 and $3,000, something like that. So Dr. Belk's devotion to his patients has led him to question why patients are being asked to pay so much more than the actual cost. And so over the last 10 years, he has devoted most of his free time to untangling and demystifying the healthcare costs in this country. And the one phrase that I know I love to repeat to people whenever I mention Dr. Belk is, our healthcare bills are works of fiction. So on that note, I'm going to introduce to you the doctor who took works of fiction and made them nonfiction for us. So Dr. Belk.
Hello, thank you for that introduction. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you all see my screen, my slides? So when I change, oops, is it going to work? There we go. I can change it back and forth. You see it changing? All right, great. So yes, the book I wrote, which you can buy on Amazon, is The Great American Healthcare Scam: How Kickbacks, Collusion, and Propaganda Have Exploded Healthcare Costs in the United States. My website, which gives a lot of background information for the book, is called thetruecostofhealthcare.org and provides several explanations on its own. Okay, today we're going to talk about medical billing. They're not what you think you are. And as Maureen introduced me, what people need to understand, the first thing that I try to explain when I try to explain medical bills in the United States is that by and large, medical billing charges are works of fiction. And that's a little hard for most people to accept. I mean, they're legal documents. How can they be works of fiction? Well, to show you what I mean, we'll go over some medical bills complete with the payments, and you can see exactly what I'm trying to tell you. So this first medical bill was for a patient who had some superficial sinus surgery at Pacific Surgical Center at the end of 2015. Okay, it was day surgery, no admission to a hospital. He checked in that morning. He was home by noon the very same day. All right. So you see on the top line there, the amount billed for this less than 1 hour of surgery, $97,140. That was the amount billed. A lot of money for an hour of surgery, but don't worry, it wasn't paid, or at least not most of it. You can see the line immediately below that, the discount, the amount not paid by anyone to anyone, $92,687, or about 95% of that bill. In the end, the only thing paid by anyone to anyone was about $4,450 total, $3,562 by Cigna and $890 by the patient. So a total of $4,450 was ever paid by anyone to anyone on this $97,000 bill. And a lot of people ask me at this point, well, what happened to that other $92,000? Nothing. It never existed. It's like asking what happens to Santa's elves after Christmas. Santa's not real. Neither are most of these billing charges. And if you think about it for a few minutes, $4,450 is a reasonably generous amount to pay for less than an hour of surgery requiring no hospitalization. So let's look at another bill. This is for someone who is actually hospitalized. Okay, he was hospitalized at Alta Bates Medical Center in Berkeley, California for 3 days for eye surgery. The amount billed, $126,714. Again, most of it was not paid. You look 2 columns over, you can see patient savings. That's the amount, that's the discount, the amount not paid by anyone to anyone, more than $107,000. The total amount paid by anyone to anyone on this $126,000 bill, $19,529, or 15% of this enormous bill. Here is another bill. In 2014, this patient was hospitalized for 10 days at John Muir Hospital. All right. He even spent a good amount of time in the intensive care unit. The amount billed, $367,000. Again, most of it wasn't paid. You can see a few lines down from total charges, the adjustments. Adjustments are the exact same thing as patient savings or discount. Not paid by anyone to anyone. In this case, it's just over $264,000. In the end, the insurance company made 2 payments. I don't know why, but 2 payments, one of $68,508, the other of about $34,000. So just over $100,000 was paid on this $367,000 bill, or about 30%. Here we have another bill. Woman hospitalized for 2 days at Stanford Medical Center for abdominal surgery. Not serious, she was home in 2 days, all right? Again, nearly 6 figures billed, $91,579. In this case, though, the insurance company, Cigna, inexplicably decides to pay nearly $55,000, or 60% of this bill. Why? I don't know. It's only money. And, oops, this bill was an emergency room. A bill from an emergency room at UCLA Medical Center. All right. This is for a person who had a minor motorcycle accident on the highway. He was taken by ambulance to the emergency room, but he wasn't injured. They dusted him off, sent him home. Total amount bill, charges you can see, $16,231. This time, the insurance company agrees to, on their own, pay over $11,000 and hit the patient with a bill for more than $3,500. So in this case, you have almost $15,000, or 93% of this $16,000 bill is paid. So if you're keeping score at home, you got 5% of the first bill, 15% of the second bill, 30% of the third bill, 60% of the fourth bill, and now 93% of this bill. Now you may think that's confusing, but just in case you're not quite confused enough, I did save the best 2 bills for last. All right. This bill is for a woman who had middle-aged woman who had United Healthcare as her insurance and got a hysterectomy at Alta Bates Medical Center in Berkeley, California. This bill is for a middle-aged woman who has United Healthcare as her insurance and got a hysterectomy at Alta Bates Hospital in Berkeley, California. All right. So they both have United Healthcare, both at Alta Bates Hospital, both had hysterectomies. What was the difference? In this first bill, it was day surgery. You can see she checked in on February 23rd, checked out the very same day. She was home by noon the same day. Her operation was a little more complicated. 3-day hospitalization at Alta Bates Medical Center. All right. Now, as you might expect, a lot more was billed. You can see towards the bottom of the, on the left, you can see total amount billed was $86,132. So a lot more was billed for the 3-day hospitalization than was billed for the day surgery. Only $41,000 was billed for the day surgery. So more than twice as much, $86,000 to $41,000. However, the payment by United Healthcare for the day surgery was more than $29,000, or 70% of the bill for the day surgery. The total payment, patient plus insurance company, was just under $13,000, or less than half, for the 3-day hospitalization as for the day surgery, even though more than twice as much was billed for the 3-day hospitalization as for the day surgery. You can see there, it's patient, the insurance paid $10,153, and the insurance company paid about $2,700 for about $12,980 total. paid on this 3-day hospitalization. What are we seeing here? Chaos, complete chaos. As I said, these billing charges are works of fiction, but not only that, the payments have very little to do with the amount charged or even the medical service provided. You can't tell from these bills how much would ever be paid. And the reason for that is by design. If you have no idea how much something should cost based on the billing charge or even the medical service provided, you can never know when you're being overcharged. And guess what? You are being overcharged most of the time. Now, in the midst of this chaos, you can get a little data on terms of averages. This is from CMS data. All right, you can see a graph showing the total amount billed by all hospitals in the United States and the payments, total payments on all of those bills between 1996 and 2015. And you can see on this graph, in 1996, hospitals billed an average of about 75% above what they got paid. They were paid about 60% of what they billed, or 56% of what they billed. All right. By 2015, billing charges had in all hospitals in the United States exceeded payments by more than 3.5 times. In other words, hospitals got only paid about 28% on average of the total amount they billed. They issued bills of over $3.2 trillion and got paid only about $900 billion. Okay, so you might ask, why are hospitals putting up with this? Why are they putting up with such a random, chaotic payment system and getting paid an average of only 28 cents on the dollar? Well, the reason they're putting up with it is because it's working out quite well for them. This is from the American Hospital Association. These are the average profit margins of all hospitals in the United States. And you can see since 2012, they've had an average profit margin of 8%, meaning that 28% they've been collecting on the bills they've issued is actually 8% over all of their expenses. And to sweeten the deal even more, over 80% of hospitalizations in this country occur in nonprofit hospitals, meaning the vast majority of hospitals do not owe any taxes on all of that profit they're making. So they're paid quite well to be absolutely clueless about how they're paid. And when you're paid to not know something, you stop caring after a while. All right. Now, how can this system be used against you? Well, I have a couple of great examples because, well, this first one was in the Los Angeles Times, so you don't have to take my word for it. All right. So this person, Joanne Snyder, she got a CAT scan at a Long Beach hospital, right? And the billing charge for that CAT scan was over $6,700. However, she was on a high deductible and her insurance, Blue Shield, appeared to cut her a real nice deal. They said, okay, you get a 67% discount. It's only $2,336. And she suspects something. That still sounds kind of high, she thought. So she calls up the hospital and asks them innocently, if I just pay cash for this procedure, don't have insurance, how much would it cost? And they told her $1,054, less than half the deal Blue Shield of California got her for her CAT scan. Okay, why was she able to pick up the phone and get herself a better deal than an insurance company that has billions of dollars in revenue and millions of customers? Simple. The insurance company had no interest in cutting her a deal. All right. And here is, this was from the Wall Street Journal in February of 2016. This is a little bit more broader because this person called up several hospitals in the country and asked basically the same question. All right. And here are just some examples. Okay. How much would an MRI of the foot cost if someone paid cash? And this hospital in Michigan said $379. The insurance company, Aetna, would get it for $445. You can see the tonsillectomy, MRI of the knee, same thing. A lot more would be paid if you had insurance and used your insurance and you're on a high deductible than if you just pick up the phone and say, how much would this cost me cash? Why? The insurance company is deliberately jacking up their costs when it's their money. All right. And so you might think, okay, well, then what do I even need insurance for? Why don't I just go without insurance? Good luck with that. Here's the point. The hospital can cut you a deal if they want to. They don't have to. This is a bill from someone who got into a bicycle accident, was taken by ambulance to Mercy San Juan Hospital in Sacramento, California. All right. This was Jeff Cortan. I wrote about him in Huffington Post. All right. He had, again, it was a minor bicycle accident. He did get a CT scan, a tetanus shot, and a few stitches. He was sent home in less than an hour. The billing charge, $31,613. In this case, the Cortans had absolutely no insurance. They call up the hospital and ask, can you cut us a deal? And the hospital said, $18,000. $18,000 for less than an hour in the emergency room. And that was the point. They had no other leverage with this hospital. This was after the fact. If you're forced to, if you go to the hospital in an emergency, heart attack, a stroke, meningitis, you have no basis for negotiation. And then you're left with the bills after the fact, and the hospital can cut you a deal or not cut you a deal. It's up to them. All right. And this is the whole point. What's in it for the insurance company? Well, it's a protection racket. All right. Health insurance companies in the United States are far less about paying for needed medical services than they are about protecting you from all of this fictitious overbilling. You don't want to go through us? Well, fine. You're on your own with that $95,000 bill for an hour of surgery. You're on your own for that, $31,000 ER bill for, getting bumped on the head, whatever. All right. So they can protect you. Now, they don't always do such a great job, as you saw from some of those bills. The patient payments sometimes in and of themselves greatly exceeded what the medical costs ought to have been. But the fact of the matter is, without insurance, you are risking tens of thousands of dollars in excess billing that you might not be able to do anything about, especially if you're caught in an emergency. It could bankrupt you. So how much does it cost the insurance company to offer this? Well, really nothing, because they have a great deal of leeway to reduce bills pretty much as they want. The hospital obviously isn't asking too many questions, as you could see from all of those billing payments. But if you don't go through the insurance company, how much is it going to cost you? Well, you don't know, but it could be tens of thousands of dollars, or even more than $100,000, if you have enough medical costs. All right. Now, you might think, okay, they spend a lot when it's your money, like if you're on a high deductible. What if it's their money? Well, then they're going to be really stingy, right? Then they're going to be fiscally conservative because they don't want to spend their money, do they? Wrong. An insurance company is a universal middleman. Money goes through them. They keep a percentage of every dollar that goes through them into healthcare. Hence, the more everything costs, the more they keep. In other words, they are motivated to keep costs increasing no matter what. And this graph kind of shows you what I mean. So this graph shows you, and this is from SEC filings of all the insurance companies, of the largest, the 7 largest for-profit insurance companies. All right. And the red line shows total healthcare costs, how much they pay out in healthcare costs. The green line shows how much they take in premium revenue, and the blue line is total revenue. All right. And you can see these insurance companies have grown a lot. They've grown from, total revenue of about 120 billion in 2003 to a total revenue of just about 500 billion in 2017. So they've grown about 4 times, a little more than 4 times. All right. And their healthcare costs have grown along with their revenues because they're required to do this. Health insurance companies are very proud to say that they spend, on average, 80 to 85% of what they take in premium revenue each and every year in healthcare costs. So by spending 80 to 85%, which is what's called their medical loss ratio, they make it look as though they're not wasting money. That's how it looks. But here's the catch. Even though they're obligated to spend 80 to 85% of what they take in premium revenue in healthcare costs directly, they're not obligated to spend that money wisely. They can dump it. They can overpay anytime they want. Anytime they need to raise their loss ratio, they can overpay. It doesn't have to, it can be by a lot, it can be by a little. They can turn that dial up and down on the bills that they pay the same way they can turn that dial up and down on the bills that you pay when you're on a high deductible. And they have complete control over how much they are obligated to pay on their medical bills. And here's the deal. The more their costs go up, the more they can hit you for premiums the next year. And they always have those bills to show you to say why this is costing so much. Hey, I'm getting a 70% off on this bill, but still look at how much it costs. They don't tell you they might have gotten 80% off the bill if they just asked. All right. So maybe they're paying, 50, 80%, 50 to 75% more than they needed to, but it always looks like a deal because you can't tell from these billing charges how much anything ought to cost. And they're using that against you. And the insurance companies say, hey, look, our profit margins aren't huge. Look, we're only making 3 to 5% profit margin. Well, guess what? 3 to 5% of $500 billion is a lot more than 3 to 5% of $130 billion. That's just math. As long as they keep their revenue climbing, their margins never look huge, but the total amount of money they take in keeps growing and growing and growing. And the only way they can keep their revenue growing is by keeping their costs growing. And the best way to keep their costs growing is to pay more for everything each year, whether or not the hospitals ask for it or anybody else. And it isn't just hospitals. So this graph shows you what I'm trying to demonstrate, but in a slightly different way. This is from OSHPA, the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development in California. Okay, so this is all California hospitals between 1995 and 2016. All right. So this is the amount spent, the average amount spent per hospitalization. So for each hospitalized patient, this is the average amount spent for the total hospitalization. The green bar is what Medi-Cal spent per hospitalization on average each year. The yellow bar is what Medicare spent, and the purple line is what private insurance companies spent per hospitalization. Now you can see in the 90s, Medicare, Medi-Cal, and private insurance spent on average about the same amount. But then the insurance companies suddenly realized, hey, if we pay more, we get more. And they started increasing their payments per hospitalized patient to the point where by 2015, Medicare and Medi-Cal had about doubled the amount they spent based from 2000. They spent about $8,000 per hospitalization in 2000. By 2016, it's about $16,000. The private insurance companies are paying twice as much as Medicare and Medi-Cal, or almost twice as much by 2016. So they've gone up 4 times. Why? That's how they make money. This graph shows the exact same data only for outpatient procedures. All right, blood tests, X-rays, CAT scans, ER visits. The amount spent by private insurance was just a little bit more than what Medicare and Medi-Cal spent in the 90s, but by 2016, they've exceeded Medicare and Medi-Cal payments by twice as much. Now, you got to think here. Medicare covers people over 65 and the disabled. Medi-Cal covers the impoverished. Who's going to cost more on average for any medical service? Someone who's elderly and disabled, or somebody who's impoverished, or someone who's privately insured? Keeping in mind, most people who are privately insured get it through work. They're working well. They're younger than Medicare patients. They tend, they're not obviously not disabled. Why are they costing so much per service? So much more than Medicare and Medi-Cal. Simple. Private insurance companies make more by spending more, and it's always your money. And it isn't just in hospitals. I always like to, hit people with the curious case of Patricia Bernstein. She's a patient of mine. She has migraine headaches. All right. This is about medication. She takes a medication called Maxil. The generic is rizatriptan for her migraines. Works great. And in about 2015, she'd been on the medication for years. I wrote her prescription. It's been generic since rizatriptan's been generic since 2013. In 2015, I wrote her prescription for generic rizatriptan. I gave her a prescription for 40 pills. She takes only a couple of weeks, maybe, or a couple of months. So I said, this is going to last you for several months. All right. And she goes to the local Walgreens, and Walgreens says, sorry, we can't fill it. It's not covered by your insurance. It's a generic medication. Why not? Okay. And not only that, Walgreens told Patricia, she got this in writing, right? They told Patricia, hey, look, if you pay for this yourself, it's going to cost you $1,489.99, nearly $1,500 or $37 a pill. All right. So we went through the trouble of authorizing it. All right. Get the insurance company to reconsider. And they said, okay, she can buy it. We'll cover it. That's what they said. She goes back to Walgreens. And Walgreens says, your copay, we're only going to sell you 10 pills. 40 is too many. And your copay for those 10 pills is $167.94, $16.80 per pill. That's her copay. And I tell her, forget about Walgreens. Forget about your insurance. Go to Costco, not Canada, Costco. Go to Costco and tell them you don't have insurance. Costco sells her all 40 pills for a cash price of $41.21. Okay, let's recap. Walgreens said these pills are $37 a piece if you pay cash for them. But with your insurance, well, we'll sell them to you for $16.80 a piece. In reality, pharmacies only pay about $1 a pill for rizatriptan. In fact, now they only pay about 50 cents a pill. You can get it for even cheaper than that. There was absolutely no reason for Walgreens to put a price of $1,500 for 40 pills. Walgreens themselves only paid about $40 for those rizatriptan pills, and Costco could sell it to her for $41, cash. Why? That's all they cost. Just like with hospital bills, most pharmacy bills are works of fiction too. We have this illusion that all prescription medications in the United States are really expensive. The reality is, since 2017, over about 87% of prescriptions filled in the United States are for generic medication, and the vast majority of generic medications cost pharmacies only pennies per dose. All right? And this is the problem. You assume all these medications are so expensive. If you don't know that the vast majority of prescription drugs are not expensive at all, you will never suspect when you're being overcharged, just like with those hospital bills or those CT scans. You don't know because you think everything is expensive. Now, there are very expensive medications. If you need a brand name medication, if there's no generic available, and that's, 12, 13% of prescriptions filled, brand name medications on average cost 100 times as much as the generic equivalent. Brand name Lipitor costs $15 a pill. Generic atorvastatin, same drug, costs 12 cents a pill. All right. Brand name Viagra costs $60 a pill. Generic sildenafil costs 25 cents a pill. Brand name Maxalt costs $40 a pill. Generic rizatriptan, 50 cents a pill. Okay, the difference is not 100%, it's 100 times as much. So if you are stuck with a brand name medication, it's phenomenally expensive. But 7 out of 8 prescriptions filled in this country are not for brand name medications. It's most of the drugs we use for most of the problems that we treat. And most of the time, your copay for a generic medication is more than the medication actually costs. I see this all the time. Someone coming to me and saying, you know, I pay $10 or $20 a month for some generic blood pressure pill, and I show them that they can get it for $35 a year at Costco, cash, no insurance. That's the rule, not the exception. All right. So the bottom line here is a course in basic economics. People like to talk about the free market all the time. And we sort of have a semi-free market here in the United States. And I'm oversimplifying this, but in a free market, you have buyers and you have sellers, right? And it's natural for the buyer to want the lowest price he can get for any good or service he's trying to buy. It's natural for the seller to try to sell it for the highest price because it's money. And he who has the most negotiating power usually gets his way, but they kind of meet in the middle. Then they settle on a price, right? That's how the free market's supposed to work if you really want to oversimplify it. Here's the problem with healthcare economics. You have providers, which are basically your seller. You have consumers, the people needing the healthcare. And you have this universal negotiator, the insurance company. Everything goes through the insurance company, and they set the prices. Here's your problem. The provider, who's the seller, still wants the highest price he can get because it's money. However, the negotiator, your insurance company, also wants prices to be as high as possible so that more money goes through them and they can keep a bigger cut. And this ought to infuriate the consumer. So how do they pull this off? It's simple. You create a billing and payment system that's so incredibly confusing and convoluted, no one knows how much anything ought to cost or even where most of the money is going. And then you give everyone the impression that everything in healthcare is insanely expensive. And you got these billing charges to back you up. And the result, they can rob you blind by overcharging you every time you need healthcare, and even when you don't, because your premiums are so expensive. How's that for a scam? All right. Questions?
Hi, this is Erica Farrison. Thank you so much, Dr. Belk. Yes, we are opening it up for questions. Jason Small, it looks like you have some questions coming in from Facebook. Go ahead.
I do. I have one from Leland Jung is asking, he's saying 61% of workers are on the self-funded plans where the employer acts like the insurance companies and pay the medical bills. Do they get profit from doing this from our system? Like, do they get something similar to MLR, 15 to 20% from tax subsidies? If so, does this mean that employers have been co-opted to be part of the healthcare industry?
Okay. Employers have been scammed here. Number one, there's a lot to unwrap there. There's a lot to talk about. First, it's 76% of employer-sponsored healthcare plans, or people receiving employer-sponsored healthcare plans. It's self-insured. Okay, what does that mean? The insurance company, for a monthly flat fee of about $25 per member per month, the insurance company does all the negotiating and paperwork. It's called an administrative service only contract, right? They do all the negotiating and all the paperwork and all the denials and all that bureaucracy that you love about the insurance company. Hello?
We're still here. We just want to see a bigger you.
Okay, all right. They do all the negotiating, but here's how it works. The employer sets aside an account that belongs to the employer, but the insurance company writes checks off of it. All right. The insurance company writes checks off of it, so they pay for the CAT scan, the appendectomy, the hospitalization, whatever. They pay for it all using the employer's money. So the money never belongs to the insurance company, even though the insurance company is the one writing all of the checks off of it. All right. And the employer believes that this is a way to cut out the middleman. The employer believes that by self-funding this way, and paying for their own expenses, that they can somehow save money. And it appears like they can because, hey, they're only paying the insurance company $25 per member per month, as opposed to, $300 per member per month for actual premiums, right? Unfortunately, the employer has absolutely no way to oversee how the insurance company is spending their money. It's an unlimited expense account with no oversight because the insurance company never gives the employer any meaningful feedback on what is being spent on any medical service. The only feedback the employer gets is they get told how much money was spent in total for their employees on healthcare each and every month so that the employer can refurbish the insurance. The assumption that the employer has, which is wrong, the assumption is that an insurance company is always going to save money everywhere they can and is always going to be as parsimonious with the expenditures as they possibly can. I just showed you that's completely false. They also assume that there's some sort of existing contract, a set price for all services that the insurance company has, carved in stone with each and every provider, and I just showed you that's false. So the employers are getting completely hoodwinked on these administrative service only contracts, and they have absolutely no idea, because every time they try to audit what the insurance company is doing, the insurance company throws so much sand in their face, it's unbelievable. I have several chapters in my book just devoted to what a complete scam administrative service only contracts are for employers, but they have no clue because they don't understand these bills either. I mean, even if they were given feedback on how much is paid on these bills, how do you know what a deal is? You get a 50% discount on a hospital bill. Is that a reasonable discount, or is that 5 times what it ought to be? If you don't know that, if you don't know that basic thing, how can you ever tell if the insurance company is cutting you a deal? But you always have these assumptions that health insurance companies are parsimonious. They're going to save money everywhere they can, when in reality, health insurance companies are highly motivated to spend like a Kardashian at Saks Fifth Avenue. And that's what's really going on. But most people don't suspect that. Next question.
Yes, it comes from, I'm asking you to unmute, Isaac Lieberman.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Really appreciate your presentation, especially I noted your comment that the health insurance industry is a protection racket.
Yes.
I've seen numerous newspaper reports over the years of multi-million-dollar judgments in courts against insurance companies for fraud and other types of malfeasance. How can we work together with you to get the executives of these companies prosecuted and imprisoned, and the companies put out of business using the RICO statutes, the racketeering influence, corrupt organization statutes that have been used to put other similar organized crime syndicates out of business?
Well, the problem is there are times when insurance companies do cross the line legally. Unfortunately, just about everything I've described for you tonight is 100% legal. That's your problem. They do break laws, but nothing I'm telling you tonight is against the law. Okay, I get this from I get this information from the statements they file with the SEC. I'm not getting this from police rap sheets. I'm not getting this from, spying. This is all stuff that if you look in the right places, it's out in the open because it's not illegal. All right. There is no oversight. There is no regulation. And when there's no regulation, there's no law to enforce. And that's the problem. You can't prosecute them for this until you've made this against the law. And it's not, as much as it ought to be. That's one of the first things I say in my book. The biggest problem is most of what I'm telling you, or almost everything I'm telling you in my book, in this on my website, it's perfectly legal, even though it shouldn't be.
So how can we work together with you to get these acts made illegal so that we can do what's needed. Right now,
You gotta
selling
inform your
loose
politician
cigarettes
of
on the
what's going
street.
on. I guarantee he's as clueless as you as anyone else.
Who is?
The politicians. You think they know all of this stuff? A lot
Yeah,
of the
I
time,
think they're
the
paid
comes into
to
everyone
make this
else's.
stuff legal. They're
Yeah.
paid by the billions of dollars of our tax money that goes to the health insurance companies. Then the executives turn around and funnel that money back to the politicians to make sure that they're made legal or not prosecuted.
Right, but the point is, the assumption everybody makes is that these insurance companies are rich because they're being fiscally conservative and they're being responsible, and that's how they're making their money. That's an assumption. I'm telling you, the insurance companies are lying about all of these costs. All right.
That's committing fraud against the American people.
They are committing fraud against the American people. And if you can demonstrate the fraud, it becomes indefensible. And I'm giving you the evidence that you need to present of the actual fraud. Keep in mind, fraud is only illegal when somebody makes it illegal. And the evidence that I'm presenting you is indefensible if you present it. But unfortunately, most people, even in the reform movement, I keep saying they're all barking up the wrong tree. All right. They're accusing the insurance company of all kinds of things, but the insurance companies are actually doing something else. And what the insurance companies are doing is perfectly legal, but it ought not be. And the reason it's perfectly legal is that so few people are really aware of it. Okay. You saw those bills. All right. Those are bills that patients brought me, that people sent me on my website. Those are actual medical bills with dates, and I even know who the people are, though I didn't share that information with you. All right. For actual medical procedures. You know, the graphs that I show you are from CMS data. It's from the SEC filings of the insurance companies themselves. You know, this isn't stuff I broke into the CIA to get. This is actual evidence. And this is the evidence that you need to present to, you know, when you're trying to reform the system. This is the argument you come with. They're lying to us and they're robbing us. Okay. And that ought to be illegal. And until it is, they're going to keep doing it, because why wouldn't they? They're making lots of money with this system.
Thank you, Dr. Belk. I just want to read Chung Sim Lin put in the comment, the way to solve the problem is to remove the insurance companies from healthcare and to institute global budgeting through a single payer, i.e. improved Medicare for all. Thank you, Chung Sim. We have a question from Bob Jung. Bob, I'm asking you to unmute.
Hello, Bob.
Bob? There he is.
Hi. So the health industry likes to claim its profit margins are low compared to other industries. Is this because how you explain they're driving up spending way up so that their actual percentage looks low?
Exactly. They say, oh, hey, we're only making 3 to 5%. Yeah, how do you like 3 to 5% of $1 trillion? You know, I mean, it's like, it's the total dollars are huge, right? I mean, if I offered you 50% of $100 versus 5% of $1 billion, which would you take? Yeah, it's just math.
It's a talking point. It's a talking point they always try to sell.
Right, I know. And that's the point. It's a clever scam. I never said they weren't clever. By saying their profit margins are always low in terms of percentage, they hide the fact that their actual profits in dollars are huge. And, you know, the hospitals are doing even better for the most part, but the hospitals don't have a medical loss ratio. So there's that. But, well, I shouldn't say that. The individual hospitals aren't nearly as big as the individual insurance companies. Anybody tries to tell you that hospitals are beating up an insurance company, I mean, you know, United Health Group, you know, has more revenue than all hospitals in California combined, right? It's not a fair fight at all. But the The secret of the insurance company is rapid growth through rapid increase in expenditures, and keep that profit margin slim but constant. And it just grows with the, it grows with the revenue. It grows fast, it grows far. And as long as they always keep 3 to 5%, well, again, 3 to 5% of $1 trillion is a lot of money, more than I got. How about you?
So I have another question from Facebook. This is from Leland, saying, if these large corporations using self-funded plans are being ripped off too, why can't we get these huge corporations to help instead of doing nothing or helping the insurance companies?
Yes, yes, yes. That's what I've been saying forever. It takes a Titan to defeat a Titan. If Microsoft and GE and Ford, all knew how much they were being scammed, they would be pissed. But they don't know, because the board of directors in these companies, they talk about stock prices, stock prices, stock prices. They have no idea, okay? They're clueless. I know. I've spoken to some of these people. They're clueless. And, part of it is they kind of don't want to admit that they've been scammed. I mean, there's a saying attributed to Mark Twain. It's a lot easier to fool someone than to convince them that they've been fooled. But yeah, if you got them to realize how much they've been ripped off by these deals, I think they'd be pissed, and I think they'd do something about it.
Worth pursuing. Thank you, Dr. Belk.
Yes.
I thought I saw a hand from Chung Sim. Am I wrong, Chung Sim?
I lowered my hand, but since you're asking, I have a question for Dr. Belk. Dr. Belk, I'm curious how you sort of got onto this scam. What prompted you to start digging? What was it that made you start questioning what was going on?
That happened a long time ago. I kind of trace it back to one time when I was a resident this is back in the 90s at USC. I don't remember if I was a resident or a medical student. I went same place for both, and I was doing a neurology rotation. And one of my jobs as a nobody was, whenever somebody needed an MRI, I'd escort them to the MRI center, which was a building off in the parking lot, and I'd sit there and wait and wait and wait. Well, the patient was getting their scan, and one time, since it was a small building, I struck up a conversation with the director, assuming these MRIs all cost thousands of dollars, which everyone assumes. And I asked, how much do you get paid for one of these MRIs? Assuming it was like a huge amount of money. And he said, oh, they pay us about $290 for a scan, 110 if it needs extra, if it needs contrast. And I thought, wait, what? I thought these things cost thousands of dollars. And he said, insurance companies stopped paying that decades ago, or more than a decade ago. And, sure enough, I saw the bill of someone who had gotten an MRI and he didn't have insurance. It was like $4,000. And I started looking into this. And the more I looked, the more I saw, billing charges, even back then, had so little to do with the payment. And then I was talking to a pharmacy tech once, and she told me how generic medications, cost so little. They only cost like pennies. You can get get a whole bucket for $10. And this is how pharmacies make most of their money, selling the generic medications, because the copays are so much more. And I started asking around and found out about Costco. And I started putting this in a website around 2011, but I had been suspicious about this for, well, more than 2 decades now. And the more I dug, the worse it got. And this just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's like, it's like getting to the bottom of this is like getting to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. It just, no matter how crazy I think it is, I discover something else that's even crazier. And they just keep doing more. And what I showed you tonight is just very much the tip of the iceberg. I mean, even my book doesn't cover a huge portion of it because there's just only so much that I can include, or I'd still be writing it today, and I keep putting more and more evidence on my website too, but it's just so vast and it almost defies belief. But we live in a country where, hey, banks are giving $500,000 loans to homeless people, bundling it up and base the entire world economy on this. Okay. It is that crazy. But it's hard to describe it without sounding crazy yourself.
Well, thank you for trying.
Carol Sodera.
Thank you so much, Dr. Belk, for your presentation. Can you please tie this in with why insurance costs keep going up for employees?
Well, the exact same reason. The insurance company keeps spending more and more money for each procedure. It doesn't matter what the actual demand is. If you can pay whatever you want on something and you benefit from higher costs, you're just going to keep shoveling money over to the providers. And you really think the providers are going to complain? Whoever complains about being overpaid? I mean, if you're selling apples at an apple stand for $5 and somebody comes with $100 bill and says, keep the change, are you going to say, no, I can't? Of course not. The hospitals don't complain. They're getting overpaid on average. So are most providers. The insurance companies are shoveling money into the providers, and the providers are like, cool. And they're not asking questions. Why would they?
Thank you.
James.
Okay. I think people by and large realize that they're paying phenomenal amounts for their healthcare compared with the rest of the developed world. One of the questions that comes up is people that work in the industry, they somehow feel that if a Medicare for All system is introduced, their salaries are going to be hacked.
Yep.
Surgeons are suddenly going to be paid $100,000 rather than what they're used to. Can you speak to that at all?
Unfortunately, that is true. You have $3 trillion a year going into healthcare, and it's not all being hoarded by the insurance company. The insurance companies aren't stupid. They're spreading that money around. And not only are they spreading that money around, they're spreading it around in ways most people, even within healthcare, cannot trace. I spend a lot of time on my website and in my book describing how impossible it is to even know how much you're going to get paid as a provider for any medical service you provide. Doctors, I'm an independent practitioner. I write an entire chapter telling you it's nearly impossible to figure out from the service I give and the amount I bill how much I'm actually going to get paid. All right. And if you don't know that, you have no idea how much you have to lose through any system of reform. And that is the biggest obstacle to reform you're going to encounter. Most people have no idea where the money's going or how it's getting there. Right? So everyone within healthcare actually is reasonably clueless as to how much they are going to lose from any given reform measure. But yes, the insurance companies aren't stupid. They're spreading that money around, which means that if you cut the overall income of healthcare, you're going to cut the overall income of healthcare providers. There's no way around that. And that is one of your biggest obstacles. It's a reality people need to face. But once you expose all of this fraud, you can unwind the fraud, because most people, when they see fraud, when they're confronted with it, obvious fraud, they're appalled by it and they change it. That is your single best tool for reforming healthcare. You have to put all the finances out in the open and expose the scams, the individual scams and the individual frauds, and unwind them. Right now, in healthcare, you have over $900 billion a year being spent that is absolutely untraceable by anyone. This is all the money that is, being spent through employer self-insured plans, those ASOs that I was telling you about, administrative service contracts. The employer has no clue how their money is being spent in healthcare. The insurance company isn't accountable for any of it because they never physically possess the money. They write checks off the account, but the account isn't theirs. Meaning the money is not regulated in any way at all. It's not even reported by the insurance companies to the SEC, which means the money is spent completely in the dark. $900 billion a year is spent completely in the dark with zero regulation whatsoever. You got to put all that stuff out there, got to put it on the table.
Mm.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt, but Leland from Facebook is asking, why would insurance companies deny care if they profit from healthcare charges? Why do
Good
they do that?
question. You really think they want you to know what they're up to? Their entire cover for all of this is being fiscally responsible. Do you honestly think any of those denials of care actually save them money? It doesn't. Most of the time, if it's necessary care, the doctor or the hospital simply has to scream or shout until the insurance company says, all right, we'll pay for it. And do you really think that an insurance company, denying a CAT scan on someone who could have an acute abdomen, literally, when you deny medical care when it's necessary, you don't save money. You don't save money because that medical problem gets worse and a lot more expensive. But they play this game. Oh, we don't want to pay. And they just throw all these monkey wrenches into it to make it look like their major goal is to save money everywhere they can. When in reality, their major goal is to spend like drunken sailors on shore leave. They don't want you to know that. And so they play this game. Most of the medications they deny are generic medications they wouldn't even have to pay for. They're pennies a pill. The copay more than covers it. Most of the procedures they deny are necessary procedures that are just going to be appealed and done anyway. But it's a lovely game, isn't it? It's a great act of theater. And theater is what keeps the scam going.
Well, that is a perfect note to end on, Dr. Belk. We are right at time. And really appreciate all the work that you've done, the years and dedication you've put into it, and for coming here tonight and sharing that work with us. Maureen introduced you, so I'd like to give Maureen probably the last closing words. Maureen?
I wasn't expecting closing words, but I really thank Dr. Belk so much. And I really encourage everybody to get his book. It really is like page after page, a phenomenal read, but it is enraging. So don't read it before you go to bed. But it just shows us how important it is to get the insurance industry out of the system altogether. They cannot be trusted. Okay, they cannot be trusted. Anyway, their point is to make money, and that's what they're going to do. So they have to be out of the system. We cannot have for profit in the system. And also, for those of you that want to hear more from Dr. Belk, or if you have friends that you would like to hear Dr. Belk, he is going to be speaking at the California Progressive Alliance on March 6th. We will be putting that information out, in a few weeks from now when it's a little closer to the time. But we have a single payer healthcare workshop with Dr. Paul Song, Gina Harris, and Dr. David Belk. So we hope that you will join again at the California Progressive Alliance on March 6th. So thank you so much, Dr. Belk. You're phenomenal. Do you have any last words?
I guess buy my book and read it. It's, the most important thing you have to understand is everything you think you know about the system, no matter how bad you think it is, forget it. Forget it. Open your mind and rethink everything, because most of what you think your problem is actually a decoy they're throwing at you. And until you've gotten that in your head, it's very problem you're trying to fix. And if you don't understand the problem you're trying to fix, you're never going to come up with an adequate solution. I guess that's the bottom line.
Thank you so much, Dr. Belk. Erica, if we're finished, maybe everybody can unmute and say goodbye and thank Dr. Belk.
We are finished. Before you take us off live stream, Betty, for our Facebook audience, the name of his book is The Great American Healthcare Scam by David Belk, MD. So Betty, go ahead and take us off the Facebook live stream. Everybody unmute, and let's give a